In the pulse of ancient Rome, the roar of the Colosseum could drown out the cries of the dying. Those who entered as gladiators often did so under chains, not by choice. Fighters by force, human lives twisted into sport for the masses. The lure of glory was a lie sold to audiences, as blood became their spectacle and pain their entertainment. Beneath the filthy stones of the arena stretched an empire built on swords, sweat, and the torment of those deemed expendable. Tonight, we step into their shoes, battered and blistered, through dust and despair, to unearth the grim truth behind their legendary struggles. Embark with me into the gritty heart of ancient Rome, a place where the gladiatorial game served as both the city's pride and its dark secret. In this arena of power and spectacle, the image of the noble gladiator was but a well-crafted illusion, shrouding a reality of chains and despair. These warriors, immortalised as heroes, were often unwilling participants, prisoners of a conquering empire captured on distant battlefields, or criminals condemned to atone for transgressions with blood. Snatched from their homes or sentenced by law, these souls were thrust into a brutal life of combat. While the Roman public cheered for their feats, few knew the stories of these men, who bore witness to the empire's insatiable hunger for spectacle. Their identities obliterated beneath the sand of the arena. A rare few chose this life willingly, lured by the promise of glory and riches whispered through the annals of the city. Yet quickly they awakened to a grim reality, where even the dreamers found themselves yoked under the same heavy collar of oppression and deprivation. Once captured, a brutal initiation awaited, consisting of branding irons and chains, clearly marking their flesh. These brands declared ownership, etching Rome's claim upon them, while announcing irrevocably that their existence was no longer their own, but property of the lanista, the owner of the gladiatorial school. This act of branding was a profound severing of past lives and identities, confining them to an existence governed by the whims of a ruthless entertainment machine. Upon branding, a weary journey awaited as they were marched to the ludus. This torturous trek was designed to physically and mentally suffuse captives with an awareness of their new place in the Roman world. Bound in chains, they shuffled across roads still resonant with the vitality of Roman life, yet detached, mere ghosts moving toward an uncertain fate. With each dragging step, their freedom retreated further into memory, as even dreams of autonomy dissipated. Survivors arrived at the ludus exhausted, spirits already battered by their journey, ready for the regimentation of training. Within this crucible of discipline and despair, the ludus emerged as the school of survival. Dormitories stank of sweat and resignation, the air filled with the clamour of wooden training swords, and the harsh bark of trainers enforcing discipline with unforgiving precision. Here, individualism was shed, stripped away to forge obedient combatants. Daily life revolved around harsh routines, driven not by aspirations of glory, but the simple need to endure. The lanista, master and overseer, epitomised authority, ruling with an unbending resolve. To him, gladiators were assets, cogs in a machine of spectacle, engineered for the city's profit and his personal gain. Despite risks, his fate remained intricately tied to these men, chiselled into weapons under his command. For the masses, the arena was a stage of enticing glory, yet this mirage was carefully orchestrated, a narrative spun to placate the populace with tales of honour and triumph. True honour, though, was scarcely realised. For each combatant who found fame, countless others fell anonymously upon the sand, obliterated by the relentless cycle of violence. the alluring mirage of glory remained ever elusive. For in reality, the life of a gladiator resembled more a precarious tightrope than a ladder of ascent, with each battle threatening to sever their ties to life. This existence extracted not only a physical toll, but a grueling psychological one as well. Gladiators persevered under constant threat, grappling with visceral challenges to sanity and the very essence of their humanity. Encircled by anxiety and death's omnipresent shadow, survival necessitated a hardened exterior to deflect the agony of inevitable loss. Bonds forged within this crucible came undone as comrades fell, leaving behind those burdened by the haunting weight of existence amid chaos. Through the din of battle, these warriors wrestled daily, not simply for another dawn, but to preserve their waning spirit from the arena's callous grasp. Amidst these sands, an ironic convergence of Roman social classes unfolded, obliterating distinctions amidst weakened hearts. The game served as a levelling ground, an unlikely sphere where aristocrats and slaves alike struggled for survival. This paradoxical mingling highlighted an uncomfortable truth. While the arena blurred lines of status, it also accentuated Rome's inherent social chasms. Here, amidst masked adversaries, the battle reflected broader societal struggles, painted on a vast canvas of strength, mingled with sacrifice. Ultimately, a gladiator's fate lay not simply in their prowess or resolve, but was balanced precariously on the whims of public opinion. At the mercy of a volatile audience, survival hinged on more than proficiency. It required captivating the crowd's attention. In this mercurial sphere, life was subject to the viewer's tastes, laying bare life's frailty and capriciousness as even the most skilled warrior could succumb to a fateful quirk of popular fancy. The yearning for freedom lingered, embodied by the wooden sword symbolising liberation. Yet just a few seized their rudies, the hope of emancipation, shrouded by shadows of battles past. For those fortunate, the echoes of the arena persisted, and the burden of survival transitioned to the training of successors. Time moved relentlessly forward on stages bloodied by forgotten dreams, where history unfolded its secrets, with a brazen, resonating chorus of power and tragedy beneath the Roman Empire's unyielding gaze. Stepping through the gates of the Ludus, you were thrust into a world that was anything but welcoming. The training school for gladiators stood in stark contrast to the splendour of Rome itself, a place where the promises of valour collided brutally with harsh reality. The air inside was heavy, perennially steeped in sweat and resonant with the clang of metal on metal, a grim chorus that greeted those destined for hardship. You came not to seek honour, but to claw out another day of existence, chains biting into your wrists, as your heart pounded within a cage, more fitting a beast than a man. In the Ludus, glory was not a birthright, but a distant mirage, available only to those who survived the relentless trials of physical endurance and discipline. Survivors found themselves reshaped into gladiators under a regime that broke both bodies and spirits. The Lanistae, rulers of this Iron Empire, cared little for your humanity. Under their grim tutelage, you would be moulded, not as individuals but as tools of spectacle. Enslaved to their whims, every gesture of defiance was smothered under the weight of iron rules and corporal punishment. The routine here was unyielding, straining not just the muscle, but eroding the hope at its core. Dawn's break was heralded by harsh calls, pulling you into another day of grueling physical demands. Each morning blurred into a relentless symphony of drilling, grappling and defensive training. Every misstep punished severely, The rod was a constant spectre, ready to strike not just at your errors, but to quench any spirit of rebellion. Afternoon heat transformed the sands into blistering embers beneath your raw feet, as you wielded wooden swords with the intent of steel, stone weights chiselling away at your stamina. These tools, crude yet essential, forged flesh and bone into instruments of combat. Wooden swords, though harmless, were teachers of technique, mirroring the deadliness of the real weapons you would come to know all too well. Iron weights dragged forth endurance from your weary limbs, sculpting you physically, while draining your vitality drop by torturous drop. The Lannister's gaze was merciless, demanding nothing short of ferocity, stripping away civilization to uncover the primal instinct within, a transformation that made warriors both feared and adored by the masses. It was a dance of brutality and showmanship that the Lannister orchestrated with unrivaled authority. Masters of fate, they stood as barons over their human investments, driven by profit rather than grace. Each decision they made sculpted destinies, controlling life and death from their thrones of detached pragmatism. Their kingdom wasn't built on benevolence but necessity. They manipulated warrior fates with a deftness that recognised no bounds. This power dynamic was an irony, one where the very architects of your potential doom and triumph could cast you from glory to death with a mere gesture. Education here warped into a grotesque mimicry of learning where violence was the only lesson. Instruction relied not on gentle teaching, but on the visceral dialect of pain, etched upon your body through repeated blows and relentless expectations. Battles in the practice arenas became the crucible where your reactions were sharpened. Through this visceral academy of survival, a glimmer of wisdom occasionally emerged amidst the blood and tears. The blade wasn't merely a tool of combat, but an extension of your very being, your life defined by its mastery. Amongst the evolving chaos were veterans, reluctant mentors marked by their own scars, guiding new recruits who were eager yet desperate. Their mentorship wasn't born of altruism, but of mutual survival. Experience whispered through gritted encouragements, imparting strategies learned through their own trial and error. These relationships, however, were complex, intertwined with envy and respect, forging trust amidst palpable apprehension. Discipline stretched beyond the physical, delving into the psyche. Here, fortitude was honed under a constant shadow of death. Adapting to the demands of strategic insight was necessary, as perseverance and mental acuity far outweighed brute strength. This battleground of the mind demanded an unyielding fortitude, crafting warriors who could withstand not just blades, but the oppressive weight of their own fears. The physical toll on gladiators was an inevitable testament to their endurance. Muscles screamed for relief as they were pushed beyond natural limits. Fatigue became a familiar companion, yet so did resilience, a testament to the spirit's ability to endure even when the body faltered. At the breaking point, they found a shared strength, a quiet understanding that spoke louder than words, the strength to continue, to survive, day after punishing day. Ultimately, pain served as the crucible for wisdom, seeping vital lessons into every wound and fracture. It became an unwelcome companion, marking each gladiator's journey with unspoken truths about survival and resilience. From every gash and scar, a story unfolded, an enduring narrative of adversity transmuting weakness into fortitude. Gladiators embraced their wounds, each one a teacher in disguise, crafting strength from the chaos of the fates they could never fully control. And within these trials they found an unexpected gift, the strength of their spirit, shining amidst Rome's shadow. resonating with the power to capture not just survival, but an essence of humanity that thrived against all odds. In the dimly lit quarters of the Ludus, where gladiators prepared for their deadly performances, diet was a tool of survival, not indulgence. Unlike the Roman elite feasting on exotic meats and delicacies, gladiators consumed meals crafted for a singular purpose: surviving the blood-soaked sands of the arena. The modern vision of a lean, muscular gladiator belies the truth about these fighters. Trainers deliberately fattened them, layering fat over muscles as a protective armour against their opponent's weapons. The physique they cultivated was less about strength and more a strategy against death, relying heavily on calories rather than nutritional diversity. Barley and beans, plain and plentiful, formed the core of this survival diet. These staples were easily procured and stocked, providing ample energy to sustain arduous training and combat. This monotonous fare was not due to oversight, but a deliberate decision by their owners, the Lanistae. Gladiators needed endurance to weather the brutal, short bursts of combat. The diet, heavy on carbohydrates, kept them fueled through endless drills and matches, but it came at the cost of speed and agility, leaving them bloated and slow. Their meals mirrored their existence, calculated, purposeful, and devoid of luxury. Under the relentless Roman sun, gladiators consumed their bland, repetitive meals, a far cry from the opulent banquets of Roman aristocracy. The barley porridge and boiled beans, although nutritious, became a daily reminder of their servitude. Ironically, while these meals provided necessary energy, their uniformity underscored the lack of autonomy gladiators faced, confined by chains and routine, even at the dining table. Despite their roles as revered combatants, these men consumed food more befitting livestock, more for utilitarian necessity than enjoyment. One peculiar component of their diet was a drink that paired this monotony with macabre pragmatism: bone ash dissolved in water. This calcium concoction, made by incinerating animal bones to ash, was meant to fortify their own bones against the fractures rife in their blood-soaked trade. It wasn't flavour or refinement, but survival above all. Gladiators were significant financial investments, and if this grim drink could extend their usefulness by even a match, it was deemed necessary. Consumed with the solemnity of their existence, this potion symbolised a gladiator's grim pact with mortality, their strength borrowed from death itself. The controlled diet thus became an agent of dominance, a reminder that gladiators were owned, their value measured in their potential to entertain rather than as individuals. While free Romans partook in culinary pleasures, these warriors subsisted, reinforcing their societal standing. This disparity highlighted their roles as public pawns in a grand spectacle, consumed until no longer entertaining. The irony of the diets between the viewer and viewed underscored gladiators' reality: expendable entertainers, living under the shadow of death and servitude. Despite lacking nutritional variety, the high-carb diet served its purpose, granting endurance for the arduous life of a gladiator. The everyday caloric load, though, offered more in sheer energy than balanced nourishment, with hidden detriments lurking in deficits of essential vitamins and proteins. Such shortcomings strained their bodies further, reflecting the broader contradictions of their existence. Prized but deprived, warriors yet lacking warrior sustenance. Their forced march toward physical decline, unnoticed by the profit-driven minds of the Ludus. Eating the same unexciting meals became an emotional and psychological burden for the gladiators, a daily erosion of morale. Food should have been a rare respite, yet it became another component of their harsh reality, stripping any illusion of comfort in their lives. While physical preparation might have been their master's focus, the psychological toll was equally severe. With every pot of barley and beans, the reminder of their status loomed large, continuously dampening their spirits. Nutritional simplicity became shackles heavier than any chains, adding to their cruel fate. Even within its austerity, this diet had strategic advantages. The sustained energy from carbohydrates, though lacking nutritive diversity, kept them robust amid relentless training sessions. High in fibre, the diet did aid digestion, crucial given their exerting lifestyle, providing sufficient sustenance and sparing costs to the meticulous trainers. Ever the cogs in the Roman machinery, gladiators retained just enough vigour to satisfy their purposes within the arena's illustrious confines. The diet of the Roman gladiator remains a window into the larger political and economic forces of ancient Rome, glorification shadowed by cost minimisation and control. Their diet's endurance teaches us about our historical views on physical fortitude and nourishment, serving as a lens to probe our modern-day notions of strength and sustenance. The past echoes forward, spurring contemplation on how survival, often overshadowed by spectacle, frames societal structures, asking us today, how much have we really changed? In the gladiatorial arena of ancient Rome, every combatant was more than just a fighter. They were a character in a grand narrative, each assigned a role by the lanista, the master of the games. The swift Rhetoriarius wielded a net and trident, his agility contrasting starkly with the heavily armoured Mumio, whose gladius and shield gave him the visage of brute strength. These roles were not chosen, but designated to enhance the performance's drama, pitting agility against force and finesse against brawn. Gladiators, though players in a deadly theatre, faced genuine peril, as the weapons they wielded were brutally real, with outcomes often scripted by fate's indifferent hand. The arena was a crucible, where gladiators did not merely perform rehearsed actions, but adapted to the unpredictable dance of survival. Training forced disciplined choreography into their muscles, yet instinct would guide their responses during the tumult of battle. Even with the lanista's rules, every match lay on a razor's edge of unpredictability. A mistimed step, a moment's inattention, were all it took to silence the cacophony of the spectators, whose voices rose and fell with the flicker of life traded on those sands. The thrill lay in this tense dance between life's fragility and the script's seeming order. Within the confines of their training grounds, known as the ludus, gladiators honed themselves not merely for survival, but for spectacle. Under the relentless scrutiny of instructors, they repeated moves until every stroke and sidestep became second nature. The focus lay in technique as much as strength, each movement designed not just to vanquish an opponent, but to captivate the crowd. Gladiators learned this choreography of violence as much as any actor learns his lines, preparing not only for survival, but to earn the adulation of Roman society, who watched from their luxurious seats. The weapons themselves, nearly characters in their own right, laid the foundation of each gladiator's fate. Designed not merely as instruments of death, they were the tools through which stories were told, tragedies played, destinies unravelled. Whether it be the Retiarius with his net, or the Mumio with his sword, each weapon's clash and holler of metal striking metal reverberated through the stands, feeding the fervour of a crowd hungry for the harsh music of combat. These instruments bound their wielders to the unpredictable turn of fortune, a bond between man and tool, striking fear and awe into the hearts of witnesses. Standing amidst this deliberate chaos was the referee, the silent arbiter with the power to sway the fate of the combatants below with a simple gesture. His staff in hand, he was more than a symbol of rule. He was the interpreter of the emperor's whim, the conduit through which the crowd's fervour was exacted, often deciding whether a fallen gladiator would live another day or meet his end. His role extended beyond mere governance, holding within it the potential to turn the tide of life and death with the briefest indication. As gladiators awaited their entrances, the silence before battle hung heavy with anticipation, each fighter inwardly grappling with the emotional maelstrom that churned within. They faced not only their opponents, but the internal storm of fear and adrenaline, fighting to tame their own hearts into a rhythmic dance with death itself. Each bout tested their ability to channel fear into precision, their hopes alive only so long as they outmatched both their adversaries and the expectations of the roaring stands. The crowd's fickle energy washed over the arena like a storm, propelling or dooming fighters with cheers and jeers alike. Anchoring this drama, the psychology of the crowd fed on the spectacle, a potent mix of admiration and bloodlust. Their shouts and applause rendered combatants as icons of bravery or cautionary tales, each cry a living judgment. They wielded influence as real as any weapon, tipping scales with collective voices, shaping stories beneath the hot sun, to be retold as legends over firelight. The gladiatorial games mirrored the heartbeat of Rome's greater ambitions, with the crowd a reflection of an empire's lust for power and control, ever reminding each participant of their place within this grand experiment of life and dominion. In moments unforeseen, the unpredictable nature of battle would explode across the arena sands, upending the expected flow. Each shift, whether brought by a cunning twist or unforeseen stumble, injected raw suspense into the script of the games, breathing life into the tales that spanned Rome's streets for days to come. For the gladiators, it was these unplanned crescendos of chaos that stretched their skills and commanded the narrative, marking triumphs and tragedies that resonated long beyond their fleeting lives. Before stepping onto the sand, gladiators embraced rituals that bridged the gap between practice and impending doom. A blend of superstition and devotion formed their armour against fate's whims, each mantra or amulet held tightly against the oncoming storm. Rituals of camaraderie and faith tethered them to purpose, a reinforcement of mind and soul as pivotal as the shield was in hand. As they took up their weapons and opened the gate, these practices imbued them with resolve, marking the intersection of personal right and public execution. Victory in this stark theatre meant transcending defeat's shadow, yet did not grant a permanent spotlight. Each triumph aligned a gladiator with Rome's martial values, reflecting the empire's creed of strength projected onto the sands. But the spectre of loss lurked behind each moment of glory, each defeat echoing solemnly amidst the Colosseum's vast walls, a testimony to the transient and often final victory of time's inexorable passage over ambition's fleeting grasp. The roar of tens of thousands echoes through the Colosseum, resonating with an intensity that underscores the brutal conflict at its centre. In a society as complex as ancient Rome, the mob wielded tangible power. Unlike today, where audience feedback is a distant click or a casual review, the reaction of a Roman crowd determined life or death. The games were more than survival. They were traditions reflecting Rome's evolution from city-state to empire, Gladiators battled not just each other, but the crowd's fickle whim. Those voices of cheering or booing signified more than entertainment. They were celebrations of Roman strength and superiority, reaffirming the myth of invincibility. Gladiators were not merely performers, but instruments of political commentary, appeasing the masses and distracting them with spectacle. An emperor's presence symbolised control, while the audience's reaction measured a gladiator's worth, rendering each combat not just a show, but a raw exhibition of mortality and endurance. The iconic thumbs up or down, so familiar thanks to Hollywood, was once a literal symbol of fate. Historical accuracy about these gestures remains murky. Ancient references, like those from Juvenal, are ambiguous at best. Yet, what's certain is that the gesture signified a pivotal shift from life to death. For the gladiator lying bloodied on the sands, their fate hung on that moment, caught between cheers and deadly silence. This simple gesture carried immense weight, encapsulating the public's emotional influence and the ever-shifting political climate. Emperors understood these games mirrored politics' unpredictability, with the thumb's decision illustrating society built on power, yet amused by visible powerlessness. New gladiators quickly understood their precarious standing, where bravery was summarily judged by the whims of public satisfaction and a blur between sport and survival. In the vast amphitheatre, the Emperor of Rome, embodying ultimate authority, sat in the imperial box. His presence was a strategic display of power and benevolence. A mere gesture, a nod or a subtle hand flourish, could overrule a raucous crowd. Symbolism was vital in a culture steeped in pageantry, where the emperor's decisions during games revealed his reign's nature and demeanour. During instability, the games became platforms for reinforcing narratives or quelling unrest, showcasing forgiveness or might. However, the spectacle was hazardous. A misstep or neglect could invert opinion and transform adoration swiftly into disdain. To a waiting gladiator, the emperor was salvation and spectre, his judgment intertwined with the drama of power. Survival alone in the Colosseum was insufficient. A gladiator not only faced physical adversaries, but the existential threat of being forgotten. Romans revered heroes that lived at the intersection of life and legend, encouraging narratives beyond survival, valour, and theatrical flair outshone mere existence. Yet, not all managed legendary feats. Many simply endured, a testament to resilience but devoid of favour, dramatic gestures, or dramatic personas. This created a paradox. Mundane survival could be as damning as defeat. Each fighter's existence was a bid for crowds' favour and enduring legacy. Under the Roman sky, death was an unscrupulous pageantry, where spectacle overshadowed individuality. Gladiators trained not just in combat, but theatrical deaths, seen as virtuous, maintaining composure in despair. Roman culture saw death not as feared but welcomed, as a measure of worth. The spectacle was profound societal control, audiences finding cathartic solace in confronting mortality. Underneath it lay themes of stoicism, fate's indifference, and blurred lines of heroism. A gladiator's final scene was both an end and a legend's birth, crowd and fighter sharing this theatre of blood. The Roman spectacle extended beyond individual gladiators. It was a meticulous choreography, a symphony of violence, ceremony, and narrative. Beyond raw combat lay stories, exotic beasts battling humans, naval skirmishes on flooded theatres, all affirming human domination and Roman prowess. The empire's spirit permeated these events, glorifying conquest and resilience. For spectators, engagements exceeded mortal combat, mirroring Rome's bravado and empire. Gladiators stepping into these narratives found themselves entangled in an identity, both individual and symbolic, adding layers to cultural and ideological exhibitions. In this competitive world, camaraderie among gladiators flourished. Shared adversity created bonds amidst the brutality, transforming the fight for survival into narratives of mutual recognition. This brotherhood stood as defiance against enforced isolation. Kinship allowed the exchange of fears, hopes and skills, a fellowship as inevitable as battles. The notion of brotherhood extended beyond gladiators to trainers, veterans becoming reluctant mentors imparting more than just technique. This highlighted gladiators' dual existence as men and legends, where mutuality offered control amidst uncertainty and demand. Fame was volatile, turning on an emperor's whim as much as skill. Gladiators poised atop fame's height, echoed societal impermanence. Prominence touched not just survival, but public perception, pivoting unpredictably. Champions rose amidst triumphs but faced treachery, a public quick to replace yesterday's icons. A celebrated gladiator walked a tightrope of virtue and risk, desirous under favour, envious among peers, threatening even the emperor. His journey was fraught with history's eyes, combating ephemeral applause against time's relentless tide, a living paradox within the fabric of the Colosseum's eternal legacy. After the shouts of the arena faded into oblivion, and the echoes of clashing swords dissolved into the sand, you returned to the barracks, not in triumph, but in tired solitude. These buildings were nothing like a homecoming. Rather, they were stark stone structures designed to remind you of your captivity. Within these walls, gladiators lay on straw mats, desperately seeking rest for bodies both freshly injured and long scarred. The air was thick with sweat and the unyielding scent of unwashed humanity, a constant reminder of the unforgiving lives led by those called to entertain the masses. Sometimes, in the dim flickering light of an oil lamp, you might glimpse a fellow fighter whispering a prayer to gods, long thought absent by many. In this enforced brotherhood, words were few, and silence spoke volumes. Conversations were spare, and often revolved around the day's brutal contests, for few dared to dream of tomorrow. The nights echoed with the clash of metal, the distant cries of trainers, and the muffled sobs of the wounded. You shared stories of battles, knowing well that those who called themselves friends today could be adversaries in the arena tomorrow. Life was a brutal cycle of fight, rest and train, and even in rare moments of respite, the looming spectre of death was never far from mind, warding off thoughts of life beyond the next bout. For a gladiator, life off the sand was governed by an unforgiving routine, a grim parody of the freedom they once knew. Each morning meant yet another punishing series of drills, overseen by trainers respectful only of blood and resilience. Weighted practice swords swung relentlessly, muscles strained at the brink, as each fighter rehearsed the lethal dance. The lanista, your owner, watched with indifferent eyes, ready to punish failure with the whip or solitary confinement. Meal times were brief comforts, a pause punctuated by the simple act of consuming bland barley porridge and coarse bread, food that filled your belly but never fully satisfied. Still, these were moments to exchange stories of battle and bravado with fellow fighters, despite every man being both comrade and rival. In the barracks, the absence of weapons served a dual purpose, both practical and psychological, stripping each gladiator of control and reinforcing their bondage. Weapons were locked securely away, ensuring fighters remained subdued until called once more for the spectacle. Amongst these armories rested the tools of survival: nets, tridents, shields, swords, all bearing the stains of past conflict. These instruments told stories untold, whispers of fallen warriors caught on the edge of silence. Longing glances filled with a mix of dread and desire reminded you that true agency only existed within the arena, where life hung by a thread of sharpened steel. When night fell, it wrapped the stone walls in darkness, but escape into restful sleep was fleeting. The screams of past battles haunted your dreams, threading into nightmares, lulling only survivors to restless nights. Waking in the dark, drenched in sweat and caught between dreams and harsh reality, you remembered the ever-present danger around you. Each day was a demand for courage and survival, and sleep became a journey, haunted by the burden of insecurity. Faces of those slain shared uneasily with you their expressions, eternal reminders of life's fragility. Life as a gladiator was an endless series of battles, chaining you to a cycle of violence. Surviving the arena rarely meant an end to your struggle. Victory only led to more contests, until your strength ebbed, leaving only physical ruin or death. The cycle was unrelenting, vividly reminding you of its cost to the body and spirit. Each battle wore you down, chipping away and inching you ever closer to oblivion. Scars etched the story of survival, transforming your body into a canvas of savagery. Though the crowds relished your spectacle, to you, the arena was a rigged game against indifference. Warriors wore their scars like honours, each a testament to survival. In the barracks, stories of brutal victories flowed when rare spirits allowed memories to surface from the depths. Despite rivalry, camaraderie sometimes formed, united by shared experiences, lives dedicated to fleeting fury. Beneath the pride, however, lay a quiet desperation as the weight of fate pressed heavily, aspirations hidden beneath layers of sacrifice. Each tale contained a lament for what was given up for fleeting moments of glory. Rumours of rebellion occasionally threaded through the barracks, whispers promising freedom, daring to dream of life beyond, free from bonds, fueled unity against hopelessness. Yet, the reality of severe consequences loomed large, turning dreams into risks. Even with dreams languishing, rebellion signified an ember of hope never quite extinguished. Within the Colosseum's world, crowd favour was fickle. Gladiators, bound by audience whim, grappled with the challenge of fading excitement and urgency to remain memorable. As novelty wore thin, fighters battled irrelevance, offering lives as spectacle. With cheers fading into complaints, what had once promised glory became mere routine to a jaded audience, proving lives destined for dramatic narratives often sank into the sands of history. Amidst it all lay a yearning within each fighter, a yearning for peace from the violence-touched life. Hope lingered, glinting brightly at each close encounter with death, even as it seemed ever distant. A hope for dignity, an existence beyond the crowd's roar. Yet such peace was rarely granted, a fleeting reward for those who dared to dream amid chaos, holding on until finality arrived, promising an end to the clamour. In the cacophonous world of ancient Rome, when gladiators ascended to fame, they stepped into a paradoxical realm where glory and peril intertwined seamlessly. The allure of the arena promised something transcendent. To be known was an intoxicating dream. Gladiators who became household names felt the heady rush of being revered by a society captivated by strength and spectacle. Yet, beneath this facade of heroism, lay layers of hidden threats, where adoration slipped easily into suffocating expectations. Glory was a fickle friend, infusing gladiators with both prestige and vulnerability. As their names echoed across the Colosseum, their every move was magnified. The glory showered upon them carried the weight of constant scrutiny. Rivals, eager to usurp their place, emerged from the shadows, testing the limits of their celebrated counterparts. Missteps, visible to all, threatened to topple them from the precarious pedestal they occupied. Within the folds of this volatile fame, affluent Roman society began to turn its gaze toward these men. Wealthy patrons, especially women enamoured with the exotic allure of gladiators, welcomed them into an opulent but perilous world. Gladiators were embraced as symbols of power, their muscular forms and battle scars igniting fanciful desires. Still, such entanglements with the elite were fraught with danger. Affections laced with intrigue often spiralled into jealousy and vendetta, where a gladiator's rising star could lead to ruinous downfall. Fame also cast a long shadow over friendships forged in the crucible of combat. Within the camaraderie of shared struggles, envy simmered. As one rose to prominence, whispers of jealousy mingled with admiration, turning ally into potential adversary. The new reality of celebrity created divisions, a silent tension among peers eager to climb the same ladder toward renown. Within the dim barracks, where every scar told a story, the tension of rivalry infected the air. Even the Roman crowd was a mercurial force, their allegiance shifting with the breeze. Though their cheers once lifted a gladiator to heights of honour, the same voices could cool into the murmurs of indifference or grow into the roar of discontent. Rome's citizens craved novelty, and a famed gladiator faced the unceasing challenge of captivating their ever-distracted imaginations. Each triumph was fleeting, every battle a chance to either cement or shatter one's reputation in the sands. The arena wasn't the only perilous battlefield. Their struggle extended to the emperor's watchful eye. In the thrall of unpredictable rulers, gladiators danced on the edge of imperial whimsy. A favoured gladiator might suddenly draw the ire of an emperor threatened by their popularity. Under the gaze of rulers who wielded power capriciously, admiration could swiftly descend into danger. A gladiator's life nestled precariously within the emperor's caprice, swayed by the delicate balance of favour and envy. And then there was the seductive whisper of rebellion, a dangerous allure from some gladiators who dreamed of casting off their shackles. Rising to prominence sowed seeds of defiance, the illusion of power tempting some to envision a break from servitude. Yet reality grounded this ambition. The Roman Empire, with its iron grasp, swiftly quashed any spark of insurgence. A gladiator entertaining thoughts of resistance risked everything, their dreams vanishing like dust in the arena's relentless winds. Even amidst accolades, a gladiator's inner life reflected a different narrative, a tapestry woven with fear, resilience, and vulnerability. Fame was a brittle mask overlaid upon a human heart that still beat with dread and hope. Each new victory and twist of fate revealed the fragility beneath the armour, where public triumph danced intricately with private struggles. Renowned gladiators paraded their victorious facades, yet beneath the surface, their scars whispered tales of humanity's raw essence. In rare moments, those who endured left behind legacies engraved upon the wide canvas of Roman lore. Their stories echoed through the annals, not just as fleeting legends, but as enduring epics of courage, strategy, and survival. Such legacies transcended mere fame, casting the tales into timeless narratives within the empire's enduring history. their heroic saga lingered, vibrant yet ephemeral, within the dust-laden corridors of memory, bridging the chasm between past heroics and the enduring human spirit. In ancient Rome, gladiators stood as both coveted assets and dispensable entertainers, living in a world where survival depended on their body's resilience. Unlike most citizens, these fighters received medical care due to their immense value as investments. Yet the caregivers were less healers and more akin to battlefield medics, skilled in the brutal art of patching flesh faster than an injured gladiator's return to the arena. These physicians, often lacking formal education, relied on rudimentary practices learned through grim experience on battlefields. With each gladiator's life measured against spectacle demands, their wounds were stitched rapidly, ensuring the show went on. The medical methods of the time, primitive yet surprisingly effective, involved tools like scalpels and forceps. These instruments, mirrors of the violence imposed upon bodies, worked to piece gladiators back together with bone needles and threads spun from animal intestines. Despite their crude nature, such procedures allowed these warriors to be thrust back into combat. Pain was expected, its edge dulled only by doses of wine or herbs, as infection remained a constant, unseen adversary. When a gladiator lay bleeding, his thoughts likely turned not to death, but to the crude sutures awaiting him. The act of stitching wounds, more brute force than delicate art, involved bone needles punching through skin like a tailor sewing fabric. Threads were derived from animal sinew or horsehair, weaving scars into a macabre tapestry across the warrior's body. These marks, testament to the flesh's frequent pulling together, bore witness to the harsh aftermath of combat. Pain was a constant companion, with anaesthetics limited to strong wine or vinegar, and relief never assured. This meant the air often rang with their cries, echoing within the confines of the ludus. Infection, a relentless foe, seized many post-surgery, rendering survival a gamble. Honey, bestowed by nature with antibacterial prowess, was one rare ally against infection. Despite its utility, many slumped under fever's slow dominion, whispering grim truths about death in its varied guises, sometimes louder within silence. A healer's tools echoed the carnage they healed, not unlike those used to butcher livestock. Scalpels and forceps operated with chilling precision, balancing the task of opening and repairing flesh without spilling life's vital fluid. Burning embers, branding flesh with their heat to cauterize wounds, were last-ditch efforts, often mixed with salves of honey and wine. These settings, crude dispensaries cloaked in superstition, reflected the half-understood dance between science and the supernatural. Gladiators, entwined in this world, viewed their healers with fear as much as hope. The aftermath of battle carried not just physical, but also psychological burdens. Many gladiators faced lives altered irreparably by trauma, their bodies echoing with the permanence of missing limbs or maimed extremities. Amputation, last in the healing arsenal, was less an intervention than an acknowledgement of divine caprice. Each lost limb a tangible tally of the arena's toll. Society, harsh in its judgments, often swept aside these scarred veterans, their past victories drowned out by public focus on their perceived incapacity. Repeated combat demanded a heavy price. Beneath the heavily toned surfaces lay bones weakened by relentless stress. A diet rich in calcium sought to counteract this, but too often overstepped into brittleness. Treatment was basic, splints offering meagre support, and binding linen often leading to crooked healing. Yet gladiators embodying the indomitable will to endure returned time and again to the cycle of the arena, their fidelity to the fight impressively unyielding. While visible scars narrated countless battles, beneath lay stories alive with both triumph and mortal dance. These marks testified not just to bravery, but to the raw currency of fleeting glory within Rome's blood-soaked venues. Beyond the admiration lay the body's whispers of sacrifice, each scar a battle long endured against infection's shadows and cultural expectations. Yet the true invisible wounds lay in the psyche, scarred by constant violence. Gladiators, ever shadowed by mortality, often bore anxieties unrecognised by their time. The mental strain led to insomnia, imagined combats haunting their restless nights. Without sanctuary or understanding, gladiators sought solace in shared struggles with peers, their victories tinged with isolation amidst public adoration. In the stark irony of gladiators' care, the stark reality was their treatment, geared towards maintaining investment value rather than welfare. Lanistas, masters with an eye on profitability, ensured these warriors returned to the arena through utilitarian efficiencies rivaling that of a well-oiled machine, each survivor a testament to Rome's relentless appetite for spectacle. Through this utilitarian lens, gladiator care reached a paradoxical zenith, where necessity forged advances in medicine considered state-of-the-art for its era. Gladiators unwittingly propelled medical advances, their struggles paving paths for future understanding. War's grim reality forced innovation, sowing seeds for surgical advancements that reached across time. Despite the violent canvas on which these lessons were painted, the legacy of gladiators remains a bridge, testing boundaries while proving human resilience in the face of mortal constraints. These fighters carried medicine forward, promising to those oblivious to their pain a future bound by the determination to heal. In the brutal world of ancient Roman gladiators, the rudis, a simple wooden sword, held deep significance. It symbolised liberation from the grueling life of the arena, offering the promise of freedom. Yet, this modest piece of wood was often just as elusive as it was revered. For gladiators who lived on the vicious edge of brutality and survival, the rudis embodied their greatest aspiration. Shackled to the spectacle of violence, most gladiators were nothing more than slaves to the punishing whims of Rome's bloodthirsty entertainment. The rudis, therefore, stood as a beacon of hope, a tangible reward for surviving against overwhelming odds and managing to captivate the crowd, and more importantly, the emperor. Receiving a rudis was a rare honour, granted only to the few who had endured the relentless cycles of combat, and garnered enough favour from both the cheering masses and powerful patrons. Those who achieved this milestone considered the rudis not only an exit from servitude, but the start of a precarious new chapter, navigating life beyond the danger-filled sands of the Colosseum. The liberation it offered was often bittersweet, as the wooden sword also bore the weight of memories etched in blood and the haunting echoes of fallen comrades. The journey to earn the rudis demanded incredible endurance and unfathomable resilience. Gladiators faced an existence where every day was fraught with peril, training mercilessly under harsh conditions, refining skills while constantly confronting the spectre of death. The brutal training sought to break their spirits, yet inadvertently forged bonds of deep camaraderie among them. Shared suffering brought whispers among the ranks, dreams whispered of the rudis that kept hope alive, even as bodies and minds teetered on the brink of collapse. Yet for most, the elusive freedom remained an unfulfilled dream, as many met their end in the very arena they yearned to leave behind. For the fortunate few who reached the pinnacle of this arduous path, the fight that clinched the Rudies was one of ultimate spectacle. It was not just a test of physical prowess, but a demonstration of spirit and resilience, captivating the hearts of a discerning, sometimes capricious populace. Victorious gladiators not only collected battle scars, but stories of valour and survival that resonated through the crowds, the reverberations of which echoed long after the dust of the arena settled. Even with the Rudies in hand, life beyond the arena presented new challenges. Adjusting to a society that once saw them as nothing more than tools of entertainment was no small feat. While some gladiators found solace in trades where their unique skills were valued, such as bodyguards or trainers for new recruits, others grappled with a loss of identity. The notoriety and fame gained inside the arena often failed to shield them from the harsh realities of living as ordinary citizens. Embracing freedom meant facing both existential uncertainties and the challenge of blending into a world that once revelled in their captivity. For many, the psychological toll of surviving the arena lingered, as the roar of crowds and cries of combat haunted their nights, casting long shadows over their newfound independence. Memories of past battles and the spectres of fallen friends often loomed large, transforming routine moments into vivid recollections of survival's desperate theatre. Coping with these memories took resilience and courage beyond the battles they had already faced, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, despite the oppressive burden of history. Despite its promise, the Rudies encompassed a sobering irony. It liberated yet simultaneously reminded bearers of the costs of their freedom. Years sacrificed to the whims of fate and others' entertainment. It demanded a surrender of the individual for the chance at future agency, a bittersweet exchange witnessed time and again in the fragility of its wood. Financial insecurity often shadowed their newfound freedom, harshly illuminating the precarious balance between security and independence. Within the annals of Rome's rise and dominance, gladiators left an indelible mark on the cultural tapestry, their lives and valour woven into the broader narrative of a civilization that embraced spectacle as part of its identity. They became symbols of both might and transience, illustrating the profound dualities of power and vulnerability. Their legacy survives in cultural memory, evoking timeless questions about the nature of freedom and the human race's capacity to endure and inspire in the face of adversity. Thus, the Rudies stands not merely as a relic of personal triumph, but as a poignant metaphor for the eternal struggle towards liberation, a journey representative of humanity's indomitable resilience across centuries. Beneath the grandeur of the Roman Colosseum, a marvel of architectural splendour, lurks a darker narrative. The elaborate games celebrated as feats of bravery and athletic prowess were crafted spectacles of manipulation. Concealed beneath the cheers and applause, the arena functioned as a clever illusion, a stage where power and control paraded as entertainment. The very sand soaked with sweat and blood was both a theatre and a battleground, designed to obscure the stringent realities of Roman rule. The crowd, entranced by the drama, bore witness to a macabre display, a reminder of Rome's might and the people's powerlessness. While the clamour of the games promised glory for those within the ring, for the spectators, it was a heady mix of marvel and submission to the sovereign grip of their leaders. In the populace's eyes, the arena was a forge of heroes, a cradle where myths were birthed. Gladiators were not born champions. They were cast into roles determined by those craftier still, who knew well the utility of hero-making to uphold social harmony. These individuals, often enslaved or coerced into combat, served less as warriors and more as pawns in a grand deception that cloaked the brutal truth in valor's robes. On the edge of death, stripped of autonomy, they fulfilled roles not of their choosing, but of narrative necessity. Each combat a preordained puppet show, reflecting the reigning elite's appetites for imagery of courage and conquest. For Rome's rulers, this crimson theatre imposed a blood tax, a vivid testament to their domination over life itself. Every spill of blood affirmed the emperor's supremacy, impressing upon the crowd their inconsequence and compelling their reverence for the powers that be. The gladiatorial events married fear with spectacle, engendering a loyalty tinged with dread. This blood tax was not merely a performance for distraction, but part and parcel of an orchestrated engagement that maintained the populace's compliance while distracting them with lurid enchantments. The strategy of bread and circuses, far from a mere adage, highlighted a cunning political tactic. By dispensing free grain and orchestrating violent entertainment, the rulers pacified potentially restless spirits, diverting them from the inequities of everyday life. Amid lavish feasts and blood-soaked arenas, the attention of the citizenry was immobilized, their political engagement overshadowed by the spectacle of gladiatorial games. This shrewd form of control replaced potential dissent with distraction, ensuring the audience remained preoccupied and oblivious to the empire's larger machinations. Each gladiatorial bout was steeped in propaganda, with every warrior's saga narrating unyielding Roman might. These narratives, meticulously woven around the games, aimed to extol Roman supremacy, painting gladiators as subdued symbols of conquered nations. The spectacle served as a vehicle not just for entertainment, but for the transmission of imperial ideology, a tableau of Rome's invincibility and the subjugation of its adversaries. Through stark imagery and calculated rituals, the arena reinforced the imperial narrative, uniting Romans and quelling any mutinous stirrings by displaying a dismantling of foes and presenting an enduring vision of triumph and hegemony. The arena provided the emperor a ceremonial stage to assert dominance and enact theatrics, from dispensing rewards to executing final judgments. His presence lent the spectacle an air of divine oversight, where the public witnessed both benevolence and authoritarian power, an embodiment of sovereign leadership. The emperor's gestures, whether merciful or merciless, served to etch his grandeur in the public's mind. This command over life and death reinforced his omnipotence, intertwining his role as ruler with the ongoing performance art that perpetuated the impression of imperial magnificence. Gladiatorial contests drilled the principles and social orders into the very marrow of Roman civilization. The arena embodied and perpetuated values of violence and honour, presenting gladiators, often enslaved, embodying the very spectacle of life's sacrifice. In this crucible, the societal hierarchy and values maintained their continuity, offering the audience entertained moral tales that reinforced the societal structures of the day. The arena echoed as both reflection and reinforcement, composing a narrative that bound individuals within the emperor's larger tapestry of domination. The art of martyrdom found fertile ground in Rome, with the arena providing a stage for its enactment. Those killed in its sand were granted larger-than-life status. Tales of their sacrifice spun into narratives that perpetuated myths of Roman integrity and strength. These martial stories diverted attention from the systemic injustices at play. venerating the fallen as paragons of the values Rome sought to broadcast, masking the oppression brew within. By enshrining the fallen in myth, the state crafted potent tales of sacrifice, turning what could be seen as cruel fate into building blocks for Roman societal ideals. Public executions, thinly veiled as gladiatorial matchups, were both punishment and spectacle, crystallizing the emperor's authority in the sharpest possible relief. These orchestrated deaths served as grim reminders of the cost of defiance, binding the crowd in a shared experience of dread. Such brutality presented as entertainment nourished a darker human fascination, affirmed imperial dominance, and ensured a populace knitted together by shared awe and compliance. They served as commodities in a system where lives were valued as a means to fortify economic and sovereign dominion. These contests exemplified an exploitation of spectacle, reducing gladiators to instruments of financial and entertainment profit by displaying their prowess and suffering for the masses. This economics of brutality demonstrated a ruthless calculus, turning distress into capital and reinforcing a societal norm that prioritised the few's pleasure and profit over the many's suffering. Today, the haunting echoes of the arena's spectacles linger, its narratives of strength and dominance continuing to weave into the fabric of society. The Colosseum remains a relic of history's theatrical darkness, its lessons enduring even as we grapple with the shadows of its legacy in our own cultural spectacles. A riveting, if unsettling, testament to the past. As we unravel these ancient dramas, drawing lessons for today, remember to like, comment and subscribe for more on the forgotten tales of history's fascinating tapestry.